Trudeau announces reduction in temporary foreign workers. Canada will slap big tariffs on Chinese-made EVs. And Poilievre asks Singh to pull support from the Liberals. This is the Grey White North Report. Welcome back to the channel. There's been a lot of news over the past week. Finally get some time to go over some stuff and give my 2 cents on everything. First off, we'll start with Trudeau announcing reduction in temporary foreign workers, suggests more immigration changes to come. They're going to review the immigration streams and spike in newcomer unemployment. Because when you allow 2.5 million people over a 5-year period, on top of all the international students and the foreign workers and permanent residents, it leads to a lot of problems. Already we've seen housing prices skyrocket. We've seen inflation of food prices and gasoline thanks to his carbon tax. We still have an unemployment rate of something like 6%. It's over 6%. I think it's 6.4% last time I checked. A lot of high school students can't get a regular job at McDonald's or Tim Hortons or any other fast food places because a lot of the international students have taken those jobs. I see it a lot. Right now, in my area, there's a lot of Indians that suddenly appeared over the past year. Like people from India as permanent residents, and as students. Most of them are students. They're only allowed to work so many hours a week, but they've just cleared all the temporary jobs from our own students. I have one daughter, my oldest daughter. She has a hard time finding a job. She couldn't find a job this summer. Every time she applies, there's at least 20 other kids trying to get in. Some place you go to, they're just full of international students. So it's really hard for local kids to get a job. It's also hard for anyone to get a job. You need to know somebody in order to get in, it seems. When it comes to temporary foreign workers, like, seriously, how many homeless people do we have? When we can't take these homeless people, clean them up, and put them to work, pay them, give them housing, put them in bunk houses, because they're not doing anything productive on our streets, just making it look like a hellhole. Can't go downtown London without stepping in somebody's piss and shit and puke all the time. And the smaller cities around it are getting just as bad. Toronto's just a nightmare. That's what our city's become to. We got so many homeless people. Well, time to give them a job. If they don't want the job, force it. There was a thing called vagrancy laws at one time. In the smaller towns, they didn't have this problem 30, 40 years ago. He said employers in high unemployment areas, places where the unemployment rate is 6% or higher, will not be able to hire low-wage TFWs with limited exceptions for foods, security sectors like agriculture, food and fish processing, as well as construction and healthcare. Again, we have tons of homeless people that can easily do this job. We have students who can go into agriculture. When I was a kid, I worked on farms when I was in high school. I did hay and straw. I did tobacco. I picked apples. I got homeless people down in London. What, they can't go pick apples or pick cucumbers and tomatoes? Down in Middlesex, Elgin, Kent and Essex County? They can't do these things? Can't clean these people up and make them work? We need temporary students. And they don't hire high schoolers anymore for this because high schoolers would have to miss school. And with everything semestered now, they lose a lot of time. Go back to where I went to school where it wasn't semestered. You had 8 classes, the same 8 classes all year long. You had day 1, 2, 3, 4. You switch and you rotate. Morning 4 classes, afternoon, but you only took 3 each day and you rotated each day. Made a lot of sense because then a lot of kids could go finish the season. They didn't miss so much school. So that's my thoughts on temporary foreign workers. I know every area can't be the same, but that's one way to reduce the amount of foreign workers. Even when I was in high school, they were always bringing up Jamaicans to work in the tobacco fields because they couldn't find enough kids. Same with a lot of Mexicans come up every year to work in the pepper, cucumber fields of Elgin County. Even now, every so often, you see a white bus pull up next to the mall, and a bunch of Mexicans get out. But they're pretty peaceful. I don't mind. I really don't mind them too much. But again, we have a lot of lazy candy asses on welfare who can't get up and get a job. I lived in an area. I used to live in a complex, housing development complex, where I paid market rent, but there was a lot of people who didn't. Too lazy. They were on welfare and too lazy to get a job. So I'm not too happy with that. Also, when it comes to a lot of these permanent residents, they play the system. I know several who, one of them came over here to take nursing in school, and then they brought their spouse with them or a family member with them, usually a spouse or a boyfriend. Then they get pregnant. Then they get married in Canada. Then when the child's born, the child is automatically a Canadian, and that is a fast-track way to get citizenship here, to permanent residency and citizenship. Seen it a couple of times. It's a big scam. It's a big loophole in our system. So Poilievre said he would cut population growth after Liberals signal immigration change is coming. Again, Poilievre is not a dumb guy. He can see the numbers, read the numbers. It was a radical, out-of-control NDP Liberal government has destroyed our system, says of immigration. Actually, I think it's destroying Canadian nationalism. Pierre Trudeau destroyed French-English nationalism in the 80s by allowing everyone to come in, instead of just from specific areas. Now Justine is doing the same thing by destroying Canadian nationalism. And you can see that. We have pro-Hamas protests in our streets, at our campuses. Come on. So Poilievre, if he ever gets in, will cut the number of people arriving in order to preserve a program that was once widely supported. There was a lot of support for immigration at one time. Immigration wasn't a bad idea. We have a lot of space. We have a small population. Unfortunately, because of urbanization, we have large swaths of our country that were habitable 50 years ago are now uninhabitable. No one lives there. International students should be capped as well. Too many international students here. They not only affect our universities, like how many certain programs only allow so many kids in a program, and a lot of international students get into those, then it's going to affect things. Monetarily, the universities rely on international students because there's no more federal funding for them. But these international students, they go and work. They'll work 20 hours a week. I see it all the time. My workplace hires them. Cheap labor. So they're going to admit 485,000 permanent residents, immigrants who intend to settle here on a permanent basis, with the target rising to 500,000 in both 2025 and 2026. That's almost 1.5 million people. And we're already in a housing crisis. We can't build houses fast enough. Which is ironic because you go in the countryside, in my area, you find lots of abandoned houses. I drove down to that new EV battery plant they were going to build in St. Thomas. They destroyed 10 houses right there. Because no one wants to live in the rural areas. But that's a lot. Announced an initiative to rein in the number of international students. Crack down on low-wage temporary foreign workers. Shouldn't they have reined in the international students by now? Instead of waiting for the new year to come in, the next semester? Should have been done already, implemented. The Liberals will hem and haw their way. But the next thing that comes up is that I found interesting was that Trudeau says Canada will slap big tariffs on Chinese-made EVs. 100% surtax to be levied on all EVs made in China and sold in Canada. China expresses firm opposition. Of course they do. China subsidizes the EVs. Their auto industry, their steel and aluminum. They're all subsidized by the Chinese Communist Party. So it doesn't matter if the company makes a shitty product and loses money domestically. The Communist Party will still pump money into it to keep it going. And they'll sell this shit abroad. It keeps their people working because they have a really high unemployment rate in China. But hey, it's not our obligation to support Chinese workers. If the Chinese company really wants to make EVs here, they should make it here in Canada. A lot of automakers like Toyota and Nissan, they have to make their cars here in Canada, or at least in the States, and parts are made in Canada if they want to sell in North America. That was the deal. So these tariffs are going to go into effect October 1st. The tariff will effectively double the price of imported vehicles. As expected, most of the tax will pass on to the consumer. So if someone wants to buy a Chinese EV, it's going to cost you. Why would you buy one? I've seen so many videos online of Chinese EVs blowing up, like catching on fire, because the battery's not very good. It's not well done. Chinese companies do not have the same safety regulations that we do here in the West. It would be a mistake to buy a Chinese EV. I remember seeing, I think CBC had it, an article, some idiot, he bought an electric car from Mitsubishi, which is Japanese, which is a reputable brand, and he said he wouldn't mind buying a Chinese one because it's cheaper. Go ahead, buddy, see how long it lasts. See how many problems you have getting parts for it, too. Now, they're also going to apply a 25% surtax on imports of steel and aluminum products made from China, effective October 15th. This stuff I agree with. China gave themselves an unfair advantage in the global marketplace, compromising the security of our critical industries and displacing dedicated Canadian auto and metal workers. So we're taking action into that. Basically what China does is they make so much aluminum and steel, they dump it on the market, lowering the price of it that Canadians cannot compete. This will affect Tesla, which will force that U.S. automaker to supply the Canadian market with vehicles made at one or of its plants in the U.S. or Europe. Now, China warns of consequences. What can they do? They're going to ban our canola again, halt beef imports from Canada to China over some trumped-up charges. Same with lobsters. Go ahead, do it. Then I go around and make a deal with some other country that makes canola. Hey, we'll sell our canola to you at the same price, and you can sell it to China at an inflated price. Find out where they're buying their beef from and make the same deal. Buy beef from us, and you can ship it to China at an inflated price. China needs us more than we need them. They're going to have a hell of a time feeding their people soon. Meanwhile, interestingly, Poilievre and industry are calling for a Chinese EV tariff package, and then Trudeau tells that Poilievre is full of baloney, but guess what? They did. They did the same thing that Poilievre wanted. Poilievre, this is early August. He was calling for government to slap tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, steel, aluminum, critical minerals, and other products, backing calls from industry for Canada to act in alignment with its allies. I think our allies pushed Trudeau into calling tariffs because Trudeau is a China lover. He admires them. At least August 9th. So 100% tariff on made in China EVs, 50% tariff on semiconductors and solar cells, 25% tariff on steel and aluminum, block any rebates for Chinese EVs. That's what Poilievre wanted, and basically that's what Trudeau gave him back on August 26th. 2 weeks after Trudeau called Poilievre's stance on Chinese EVs tariffs baloney. He's going to do it. So Trudeau folded. Poilievre can claim that as a win. It's going to hurt Trudeau in the long run because Poilievre was there right from early on, hammering him. Then we get to this one. Poilievre asked Singh to pull support for Liberal government to prompt fall election. The Conservative leader wrote an open letter to Singh asking him to pull out of the costly coalition. Now, Singh is due to get his pension this January, I think, or December, for serving 6 years in the government, so he will get a pension. But Poilievre and the NDP know that if they call an election, they will not win. They might slide further. They will also lose if the Liberals don't get, or a big enough minority where the NDP can bail them out again. They will be faced with a Conservative government. And they will have no political pull with a Conservative government. The NDP are kind of holding the Liberals hostage a little bit. They're basically getting table scraps from the Liberals to keep the Liberals in power. They have a supply and demand agreement, which doesn't help Canadians. It led to inflation. Poilievre says Canadians can't afford to even endure another year of this costly coalition. No one voted for you to keep Trudeau in power. You do not have a mandate to drag out his government another year. Pull out, vote non-confidence in the government this September to trigger a carbon tax election, or you'll forever be known as Sellout Singh. I just call him Jughead, but oh well. Because it's true, the carbon tax doesn't do anything for you. I don't get why we have it. If they give back they say they give back 90% of it in rebates. Big deal. It's a waste of time. It's a lot of bureaucracy to collect and monitor this tax and the income it generates, and then to sit down and figure out who gets what back. That just creates another bureaucracy, bloated bureaucracy we don't need. So some NDP say that leaving it is always on the table for Jughead, but they think Poilievre wants to cut healthcare, cut your pension, and cut EI in order to give more to big corporations. He wants to ensure farmer care cannot make it to implementation this fall. We fundamentally disagree with his plans to cut. First of all, I don't think he's going to cut health care. And he's not going to cut your pension. He's not going to cut EI. Now, NDP says it's not up to Poilievre to dictate when the supply and confidence agreement between her party and the Liberals will come to an end. Because before the NDP extracted some policy commitments in exchange for supporting the Liberals. So it's supply and confidence. I thought it was supply and demand. The NDP got things and it's costing us more money now. Meanwhile, the Liberals are scrambling because they went to a retreat and didn't come up with anything different. Some Liberal MPs wanted to shuffle after a by-election loss. But no, they kept their same cabinet, which means we get the same ministers who gave us rising crime costs and housing remain. So we have the same idiots in power. The problem with most politicians is when they get chosen to run a cabinet, they really don't have any background in what they're doing. And it's like that for all governments. Trudeau said he would focus on policy over personalities as he tried to boost the government standing with Canadians. Basically, he is a personality. That's how he got elected, as a personality. All the women got wet between the knees when Trudeau walked by in 2015. Now it's a little bit different. The last election proved that the women were still there, but not as before. And now there's been a lot of hatred. The problem is, can the Conservatives win in the big cities like Toronto and Montreal? That'll be the big test. So Poilievre definitely went off on Singh, asking him to put people ahead of your pension, vote for a carbon tax election now. Because inflation's higher. The carbon taxes rule has not helped our position. That means when you put a tax on gasoline and fuel, someone has to pay for it eventually. The farmer charges more for his crops. He gets charged more for what he needs. The guys transporting the truck have to pay more in fuel. The grocery store has to pay for the truck driver. They're going to up their prices. It's a domino effect. It hasn't helped inflation. By taking it away, it'll lower inflation. So we're not going to have a federal election until next summer at the earliest. But Singh, I don't think Singh is going to fall for it. He's not going to call another election. He's not going to pull out of the deal. Because it gives him purpose. It gives his party a purpose. They're a fourth party. The Bloc Québécois have more votes than them, and he can act important because he's the one propping up the Liberals. While he's also propping up inflation, the housing costs, and the unemployment rate, as well as crime. He's propping it all up. So I agree. Poilievre challenged him. Singh's not going to accept the challenge, but we'll see. Anyway, Canadians out there, let me know what you guys think of these issues. Should we have slapped tariffs on Chinese EVs, as well as steel and aluminum? Should we also have time to decrease immigration and cut the amount of permanent and temporary foreign workers we have, as well as international students? And do you think Jughead Singh will pull out of the Liberal deal this fall? Leave comments in the comment section. Until next time, this has been the Great White North Report.